Messenger by Lois Lowry, Chapter 4. Leader had summoned Maddie for message running. Maddie enjoyed going to Leader's home place because of the stairs. Others had stairs, though Maddie and the blind man did not. But Leader's stairs were circular, which fascinated Maddie, and he liked going up and down, and because of the books. Others had books too. Maddie had a few school books, and he often borrowed other books from the library so that he could read stories to the blind man in the evenings, a time they both enjoyed. But Leader's home place, where he lived alone, had more books than Maddie had ever seen in one place. The entire ground floor, except for the kitchen to one side, was lined with shelves, and the shelves were filled with volumes of every sort. Leader allowed Maddie to lift down and look at any one he wanted. There were stories, of course, not unlike the ones he found in the library. There were history books as well, like those he studied at school. The best ones filled with maps that showed how the world had changed over centuries. Some books had shiny pages that showed paintings of landscapes unlike anything Maddie had ever seen, or of people costumed in odd ways, or of battles, and there were many quiet painted scenes of a woman holding a newborn child. Still others were written in languages from the past and from other places. Leader laughed wryly when Maddie had opened a page and pointed to the unknown language. "It's called Greek," Leader said. "I can read a few words, but in the place of my childhood, we were not allowed to learn such things. So in my spare time I have Mentor come and help me with languages, but—" Leader sighed. "I have so little spare time. Maybe when I'm old I will sit here and study. I'd like that, I think." Maddie had replaced the book and run his hand gently over the leather bindings of the ones beside it. "If you weren't allowed to learn," he asked, "why did they let you bring the books?" Leader laughed. "You've seen the little sled," he said. "In the museum?" "Yes, my vehicle of arrival. They made such a thing of it, it's almost embarrassing. But it is true that I came on that sled. A desperate boy, half dead. No books. The books were brought to me later. I have never been as surprised in my life as I was the day those books arrived." Maddie had looked around at the thousands of books in his own arms, and Maddie was strong. He could have carried no more than 10 or 12 at a time. "How did they come to you?" "A river barge. Suddenly there it was, huge wooden crates aboard, and each one filled with books. Until that time I had always been afraid. A year had passed, then 2, but I was still afraid. I thought they would still be looking for me, and I would be recaptured, put to death, because no one had ever fled my community successfully before. It was only when I saw the books that I knew that things had changed, that I was free, and back there, where I came from, they were rebuilding themselves into something better." "So you could have gone back," Maddie said. "Was it too late? Had Forrest given you warnings?" "No, but why would I go back? I had found a home here, the way everyone has. That's why we have the museum, Maddie, to remind us of how we came, and why. To start fresh and begin a new place from what we had learned and carried from the old." Today Maddie admired the books as he always did in Leader's home place, but he didn't linger to touch or examine them, nor did he stop to admire the staircase with its intricate risers of crafted, polished wood that ascended in a circle to the next level, when Leader called, "Up here, Maddie." He bounded up the stairs to the second floor into the spacious room where Leader lived and worked. Leader was at his desk, looking up from the papers in front of him, and smiled at Maddie. "How's the fishing?" Maddie shrugged and grinned. "Not too bad. Caught 4 yesterday." Leader laid his pen aside and leaned back in his chair. "Tell me something, Maddie. You and your friend are out there a lot, fishing. And I've seen you doing it for a long time, since you came to village as a little boy. Isn't that so?" "I don't remember exactly how long. I was only about this high when I came." Maddie gestured with his hand, placing it level with the second button of his own shirt. 6 years, Leader told him. "You arrived 6 years ago. So you've been fishing for all that time." Maddie nodded, but he stiffened. He was wary. It was too soon for his true name to be bestowed, he thought. Surely it was not going to be Fisherman. Was that why Leader had called him here? Leader looked at him and began to laugh. "Relax, Maddie. When you look like that I can almost read your mind. Don't worry, it was only a question. A question about fishing. Fishing's a thing I do just to get food or to fool around. I don't want it to turn into something more." Matty liked that about Leader, that you could say what you wanted to him, that you could tell him what you felt. "I understand. You needn't worry about that. I was asking because I need to assess the food supply. Some are saying there are fewer fish than there once were. Look here what I've been writing." He passed a paper over to Matty. There were columns of numbers, lists headed salmon and trout. Matty read the numbers and frowned. "It might be true," he said. "I remember at first I would pull fish after fish from the river. But you know what, Leader?" "What?" Leader took the paper back from Matty and laid it with the others on his desk. "I was little then, and maybe you don't remember this because you're older than I am." Leader smiled. "I'm still a young man, Matty. I remember being a boy." Matty thought he noticed a brief flicker of sadness in Leader's eyes, despite the warm smile. So many people in village, including Matty, had sad memories of their childhoods. "What I meant was, I remember all the fish, and the feeling that they would never end. I felt that I could drop my line in again and again and again, and there would always be fish. But now there aren't. But Leader—" Leader looked at him and waited. "Things seem more when you're little. They seem bigger, and distances seem farther. The first time I came here through forest, the journey seemed forever." "It does take days, Matty, from where you started." "Yes, I know it still takes days. But now it doesn't seem as far or as long, because I'm older and bigger and I've gone back and forth again and again, and I know the way and I'm not scared, so it seems shorter." Leader chuckled. "And the fish?" "Well," Matty acknowledged, "there don't seem to be as many, but maybe it's just that I was a little boy back then, when the fish seemed endless." Leader tapped the tip of his pen on the desk as he thought. "Maybe so," he said after a moment. He stood. From a table in the corner of the room he took a stack of folded papers. "Messages?" Matty asked. "Messages. I'm calling a meeting." "About fish?" "No, I wish it was just about fish. Fish would be easy." Matty took the stack of message papers he would be delivering. Before he turned to the staircase to leave, he felt compelled to say, "Fish aren't ever easy. You just have to use the right bait, and know the right place to go. And then you have to pull the line up at just the right moment, because if you don't, the fish can wriggle right off your hook. And not everybody's good at it, and—" He could hear Leader laughing still when he left. It took Matty most of the day to deliver all the messages. It wasn't a hard task. He liked the harder ones better, actually, when he was outfitted with food and a carrying pack and sent on long journeys through forest. Although he hadn't been sent to it in almost 2 years. Matty especially liked trips that took him back to his former home, where he could greet his boyhood pals with a somewhat superior smile and snub those who had been cruel to him in the past. His mother was dead, he had been told. His brother was still there, and looked at Matty with more respect than he ever had in the past, but they were strangers to each other now. The community where he had lived was greatly changed and seemed foreign, though less harsh than he remembered. Today he simply made his way around village, delivering notice of the meeting that would be held the following week. Reading the message himself, he could understand Leader's questioning about the supply of fish, and the concern and worry that Matty had felt from him. There had been a petition, signed by a substantial number of people, to close village to outsiders, so there would have to be a debate and a vote. It had happened before, such a petition. We voted it down just a year ago, the blind man reminded Matty, when the message had been read to him. There must be a stronger movement now. "There is still plenty of fish," Matty pointed out, "and the fields are full of crops." The blind man crumpled the message and dropped it into the fire. "It's not the fish or crops," he said. "They'll use that, of course. They argued dwindling food supply last time. It's—" "Not enough housing?" "More than that. I can't think of the word for it. Selfishness, I guess. It's creeping in." Matty was startled. Village had been created out of the opposite, selflessness. He knew that from the studies and from hearing the history. Everyone did. "But in the message, I could have read it to you again, if you hadn't burned it. It says that the group who want to close the border is headed by Mentor, the school teacher." The blind man sighed. "Give the soup a stir, would you, Matty?" Obediently Matty moved the wooden ladle around in the pot, and watched beans and chopped tomatoes churn in the thick mixture as it simmered. Thinking still of his teacher, he added, "He's not selfish." "I know he isn't. That's why it's puzzling. He welcomes everyone to school, even new ones who have no learning, who can't even speak properly." "Like you when you came," the blind man said with a smile. "It couldn't have been easy, but he taught you." "He said he had to tame me first," Matty acknowledged, grinning. "I was wild, wasn't I?" Seer nodded. "Wild, but Mentor loves teaching those who need it." "Why would he want to close the border?" "Matty?" "What?" "Has Mentor traded, do you know?" Matty thought about it. "It's school vacation now, so I don't see him as often, but I stop by his home place now and then." He didn't mention Jean, the widowed schoolteacher's daughter. "I haven't noticed anything different in his house. No gaming machine," he added, laughing a little. But the blind man didn't chuckle in reply. He sat thinking for a moment. Then he said in a worried voice, "It's much more than just a gaming machine."